Enzymes are the workers, hormones are the managers sending instructions, and vitamins are the tools that workers need.
Welcome back to another episode of the Fasting Method podcast. This is Coach Terri Lance, and I am joined by a very special guest today, Coach Lisa. Lisa, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Terri. Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely. And I'm going to just mention it, but this is a repeat for us, not for the listeners, because we already recorded this a couple of weeks ago. And then after the fact, I realized that my computer had not downloaded some of the recording because I had too much stuff in the memory. So I apologize. But folks, you are getting version 2.0 of this instead of the first run. So
remember what I talked about.
That's right. It'll be all new for us, right? So we originally decided to do this topic because it's something that comes up a lot within the TFM community. And it's something that I think a lot of people who are learning how to fast are paying attention to their nutrition. They're also thinking about supplements and what does my body need and how do I get it and how do I know? So you suggested that we do some talking about it and help inform people a little bit more about it. And then later in the episode, we'll talk some more practical stuff about how to get some of the things that your body needs. What are some things that might affect that, like timing and things like that? So I think where we started last time, Lisa, was maybe talking a little bit, giving people a little bit of frame of reference, or what are all these things, these minerals and amino acids and peptides and things. What does all of that mean?
So enzymes are proteins that do the work. They speed up chemical reactions and they break things down like digestive enzymes, right? Or they build things up like cholesterol synthesis, all right? So they're not consumed in the process. They facilitate reactions over and over and over again. Where hormones are messengers. They carry signals to trigger a response. Like insulin. Insulin is a hormone and it tells cells to take up glucose. Cortisol is a hormone and it tells the body to mobilize energy, get your day started right, interact neurologically with your day. They don't do the work, they tell other things what to do. And then you have vitamins, and vitamins are helpers, they're cofactors. So they're small molecules that the body can't make enough of or that enzymes need to function. And so many of the B vitamins sit inside enzymes and are essential for them to work. And without adequate, like let's say B1, enzymes that process glucose can't work efficiently. Peptides are a structural category. It's a short chain of amino acids. They can be 2 to 50 in length, or longer, which are greater than 50, amino acids, which we call a protein. And so if you're looking as a factory analogy, which I believe we got into in depth the first time we did the run through of this, enzymes are the workers, hormones are the managers sending instructions, and vitamins are the tools that workers need. A lot of times you'll hear about peptides. Peptides are a structural category. They're not a functional one. So they describe what something is, not what something does. You know, peptides can be hormones, signaling molecules, antimicrobial agents, neurotransmitters. I know a lot of people take the neurotransmitters. So they all tie together.
Yeah, so it's kind of picturing, I'm picturing those kind of cartoon things that describe anatomy and biology to kids. And you see the, hormones are the little signals going across the headphones, whereas some of the others are the workers doing the action. I just know that sometimes I get lost in those terms and think, I don't know, this might be a mineral, it might be a hormone, I don't know, but it's important. So now that we have a little bit of a framework for them, Lisa, how do people know what's deficient in their system, what's overabundant in their system? Because I often hear people say, like, well, Terri, what do you take? As if they're just going to write down what supplements I take and go take them. But metabolically we're different, what our bodies need, what our bodies have enough of or are struggling with are different. So it doesn't work for you and I just to give everyone a list of
Take these.
12 supplements. Yeah.
Right.
How should people kind of go about figuring out what do I need to support my system?
Well, there's something that we call a hierarchy of evidence for your own body. Of course, tests don't guess, right? But for assessment, how to know what you need, one of the things you could do is look at your symptoms, look at your history. Those are your first clues. Then you have functional testing. Look at how well the systems are actually working when you do take this supplement, checking up, doing a follow-up test, right? See if you're living the right lifestyle, eating the right food that has maybe that vitamin in it to see if you're on the right path. And then, of course, serum blood testing measures the level directly. And then you have a therapeutic trial. So sometimes you try something and see if it helps, right? How do you feel? Not everything has to have a clean lab test. Sometimes symptoms and your response to the intervention is your assessment. And I remember when I worked at the ICU, sometimes we would do what they call a medication vacation. And then when I took supplement classes, they called it a supplementation vacation, which means you don't know what's going on. You've got so many meds or so many supplements going on. Now's your time to pull back and not take any and see which ones you feel you need to reintroduce to yourself. For fasters, timing matters more than it does for frequent eaters, because when you're only eating once or twice a day, getting the absorption right is critical. So a lot of times people are taking things at the wrong time of the day, wrong time of the fast, or with the wrong foods, or not taking it with foods. For instance, we recently had a member in the community, and she's very proactive for her health and everything. We were talking about sleep, and I mentioned vitamin D3 and K2. They work well together. The fat soluble vitamins like to work together. There's some exceptions if they're higher doses, but D3 and K2 like to work together. And she was taking it at night. And D3 is the sunshine vitamin. Think morning. It needs to be taken in the morning. If you take D3 or vitamin D of any kind at night, it interferes with melatonin, your natural formation of melatonin, which you need for sleep. She made that change and she came back to group and said, it worked. I'm sleeping now. I'm not having a sleep issue. So it's kind of neat to see the epiphanies they get. They're like, this is working.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that could have been a puzzle going on for months trying to figure out why am I not sleeping? And then people start to take supplements to help them sleep. Instead, if we can really puzzle through a little bit, she could identify just moving when I take this supplement will ease me back into my normal sleep pattern.
Right. And for like calcium, I'm not a big fan of calcium. I like to get my calcium from my food. I know Dr. Fung, being a kidney doctor, he's not a big fan of calcium either. But sometimes you need calcium. And when your doctor tells you you need calcium, a lot of people will go for calcium carbonate. But that's not absorbed as well in the stomach. Just switching to like calcium hydroxypate, I'll better spell that. HYDROXYAPATITE. A lot of people call it MCHC. That's much better absorbed. The ratio to what your body will use is much better. So it's little things like that. And I advise somebody, if you're going to look at what you think you may need based on your signs and symptoms, and you've been reading too much chat GPT, right? To really pull back and find out about that, research it yourself. If you're spending $50 on a supplement, are you spending $50 worth of your time researching why you're taking it? Not just because your friend told you to take it. And are you taking it the best way? Are you taking it so that you get a good absorption on it significantly? And could you have done it with food? Do you need to take an omega-3 supplementation? Or are you getting enough of fatty fish? Mother Nature knows how to give you your vitamins much better than any supplement you can buy. in the store, but sometimes you do need supplementation depending on what's going on with you.
And going back to then that questioning of it, once I kind of do that hierarchy of evidence as you described and think about what signs or symptoms, what might be underlying those things, are there tests that help me know, like if I'm too low in vitamin D or if I don't have enough calcium or whatever it is? How do I find out? Is there evidence besides, my friend said she takes it and loves it? And then again, how do I know if it's helping me? What if it's something that I take and I don't feel any differently taking it, positive or negative? How will I know if it's helping me?
You can get some tests done that are on, a lot of people will do the organic acid test or the oat test, and that's going to look at metabolic byproducts that your body produces. It's going to look at your mitochondrial function, your neurotransmitter. It's going to look at your B vitamin cofactor status, which is really important in case you don't methylate very well, right? A lot of people don't know that. It also looks to see what your detoxification capacity is, your gut dysbiosis, your fatty acid oxidation, your Krebs cycle function, and things like that. But a lot of times you can do specific vitamins on some things. I know you can do vitamin D, vitamin B12, folate, iron, ferritin, very important one, vitamin C, and vitamin A. But really looking at your basic labs, a lot of times just like CBC and stuff like that, you can tell a lot of things from that. But the oat test shows the functional vitamin status throughout your metabolic byproducts. There are other ones to look at. MMA, which is a methyl, and I'm not good at pronouncing these words. It's just checking your methylation. And sometimes you have to do two tests at once. Like you not only check your B12, you check your homocysteine too at the same time. And also checking your magnesium RBC, or what they call RBC magnesium. So your red blood cell magnesium count is more efficient than the serum magnesium because you want to know the amount of magnesium in your tissue at your tissue level. One of the things that I see the most that happens is that sometimes I see people take vitamin C, and the body only absorbs about 70 to 90% of a moderate dose of vitamin C. So a lot of people read about mega dosing and stuff like that, like 1,000 or more. And I know my anesthesiologist asked me, wait, gave me my dosage that I needed. And it was a mega dose before I went into surgery. And so a lot of people say, well, I don't need to take more. They get a cold or they get a virus or they're under a lot of stress. It's emotional stress too. I don't need more because I understand there's not that much absorption. But the body is amazing. When you're sick or under stress, it has the ability to absorb more vitamin C. So it essentially becomes a bigger sponge, if you will, for vitamin C when it's fighting something. All right. But split dose strategy on vitamin C still matters for optimizing, just like electrolytes. Electrolytes are best slowly absorbed throughout the day. That's why I take magnesium 3 times a day. Like we do salt, a little bit under the tongue or in our tea or something throughout the day. You don't want to take 2 teaspoons of salt. You will be running to the bathroom. So things like that. And magnesium, a lot of times people will take magnesium with a high dose of calcium or zinc. They do so at the same time. It actually creates competition for absorption. So space them out by at least 2 hours. A lot of people ask the question about the zinc and copper. It has a very unique relationship. And a lot of times you don't have to worry about that copper unless you're taking zinc per your doctor's instructions for greater than 3 months. Then you need to start looking at the copper thing. Iron is probably one of the most mismanaged supplements. Take it on an empty stomach. Take it with vitamin C for maximum absorption. Coffee, tea, dairy, calcium, and any high phosphate food. So that's going to be like your grains, your legumes, your nuts, and your seeds. They're going to significantly block iron absorption. But on the other hand, if you soak those things, then it won't be as much of a problem. And even taking iron with eggs, which a lot of times people are taking their iron in the morning with their breakfast and they're having eggs, can reduce absorption. So spacing that out, iron, if you're taking it at least 2 hours from any kind of meal or even thyroid medication or antacids or calcium, you'll see a big improvement. And then things for like omega 3s. You could be getting just enough in your diet if you're eating fatty fishes and, like walnuts are high in omega 3s. And another thing is if you take a supplement like a vitamin supplement with the food that has it in it, you get better absorption. It's like we think we know as much as Mother Nature, but we really don't. So when we do take something that's man-made like a vitamin and add it to Mother Nature food, we actually get better absorption of that vitamin. So with the fish oil, with the omega 3, sometimes people will get that fish burp. So they might want to try an enteric-coated capsule. But interestingly enough, keeping them in the freezer also will help with that burp, which I find in all these little things that you find out when you do a little bit of research on the problem. So it's interesting. And one of the things like ox bile, sometimes people come to us when they first starting out and we have them increase their fat consumption and all of a sudden they're having a little bit of difficult digesting that much fat. And so we often recommend ox bile. However, if you're new to fasting, it could be that just using bitters may be enough for you to fix that. Whereas if you have had your gallbladder removed, then the ox bile may help you. So it's kind of tweaking things, and the whole N equals 1 that we talk about, N being the number of people in the set, U, 1 being the only one in the experiment. We have a lot of that going on, especially with all these supplements and vitamins.
I think that's a great example too, if I'm understanding with the example of ox bile, is some people will automatically say, well, I no longer have a gallbladder, so I definitely can't fast, or I can't eat more fat in my diet, or I have to eat low fat or whatever. And I think sometimes it really does require a little more experimentation and paying attention to. If you're talking, I can't eat so much fat because you just went and got a cheeseburger and onion rings and a milkshake, yeah, maybe you can't handle that much of that kind of fat. But does that mean you can't eat pork belly or bacon or avocado? But then also, sometimes to try to be proactive, people just start taking the ox bile before they even know if they have any difficulty. So again, I feel like some of us, and I know myself, I used to take about 17 or 18 capsules 3 times a day. And I'm sure I wasn't taking anything at the right time. I had no real foundation of why I was taking most of it. I just read about it and thought it sounded like that's what I need. So really finding out if you need it, then experimenting. And I also, with certain things, talk about starting at a low dose and see what makes the difference.
Definitely.
The daily recommended dose on things isn't always meaning therapeutic. And so kind of learning that. I think another important thing to recognize about if you're going to be using supplements is the quality of the supplements. There's a lot of problem in the industry as far as, you're just buying something in a capsule, any white powder in a capsule. Are you really getting what you believe you're getting? I think that's really important. And understanding what the numbers mean. Now, Lisa, you had created some information that you shared with the TFM community about magnesium. So I just want to use this as an example. When I look at the bottle and I look at the label, the nutrition information, I guess, it might say 2,000 milligrams of magnesium. So it sounds like I'm getting all that I might need in those 1 or 2 capsules. But then up above it is a different number. I think sometimes these things are confusing for us. Which of these numbers do I follow? What does it mean? Should I take more of this? Should I take less of this? So I think people really need to do some research on any supplements they're going to take.
And this is probably the number one question I get about magnesium is how much am I taking? When I look at the back of my magnesium supplement bottle, I see 2 numbers. Let's give an example. For magnesium L-threonate, you may see 145, right? And then it'll say percent of DV is 35. And then you'll see below magnesium L-threonate again, and it'll say 2000 milligrams. The smaller number is the supplement facts. So that's elemental magnesium of 145. Which number do you count? They both say magnesium. They both say magnesium L-threonate. Go by the smaller number. That's the elemental magnesium. That is what actually counts. The larger number is the total weight of the compound. That is the magnesium plus the carrier molecule. The carrier molecule could be L-threonate or the glycinate or the malate, all right? But only a portion of that is actually magnesium. Another really helpful hint is to look at percent of DV, and DV means daily value. So when you see the one that's lined up across from percent DV, that is how much magnesium you're actually getting.
And again, so I think it's really important to understand what your body needs, why you're taking this, how do you know if it's working? Are you taking it at the right times? Are you taking it with the right things? And all of these things to keep following on. But that brings me to a question specific then for members of our community and listeners who are working on fasting. And I used to get this question a lot. I don't get it as much now that I talk so much more about mindset and habit change. But what do I do when I'm doing longer fasts as far as taking supplements? You mentioned in the beginning how important it is for absorption to be taking it at the right times and with the right things or whatnot. How do I determine that? Let's say, for example, I'm doing 48-hour fasts. Do I just keep on my regular dosing schedule? Do I alter my schedule? How do I figure that out?
That's a hard question because it depends upon the supplement. Some supplements, they work well when you're fasting, and some work better when you're eating food. I do know Megan takes a lot more supplements during her fasting than I do. I tend not to do very many except for my magnesium. That's something where I think it's nuanced. You got to look at what you're taking, why you're taking it, when you're taking it. I mean, of course, you would continue to take your thyroid medication, right? But you don't want to take your magnesium around your thyroid medication, whether you're fasting or not.
So let's say I figure out that I do well with these supplements while fasting, but I do experience a little bit of tummy upset with some of them. What are some ways that I can still take them consistently while not interfering significantly with my fast?
Oh, you reminded me the first time I said, I know I'm not getting enough protein, so let me take some zinc while I'm fasting. Worst mistake of my life. Do not take zinc on an empty stomach. I was in so much pain. I thought I got to go to the hospital. So much cramping. But I do know that I had to take antibiotics for like 6 months, and I just took it with one olive. So sometimes taking something, especially if it's a fat soluble vitamin, taking it with something like that, like an olive or a quarter of avocado or something, or even chia seeds. That's a common one to take these things with, that you got to get these in. Those can be helpful.
All these details, I just feel like I need Lisa in my pocket. And so when I go to the cupboard and think about a supplement or go to the lab, I should have you there to answer these questions.
Well, I know when you first started skiing and you were feeling it, the elevation, I'm like, magnesium malate, you need magnesium malate. That's the one you need. Every once in a while, I'll get somebody who takes, I ask them, are you taking K2 and D3? And they say yes. And they show me two separate bottles. A good thing to know about K2 and D3 is they work well together, but they need to be in the right ratio. So if you buy a product that the two come together in, they've already done that calculation for you. Otherwise, you need to check out the calculation. And I don't remember what the ratio is because I buy mine together. But that is something that, things like that you need to know. So as I say, do a little more investigation than just, okay, I'll just buy this. Especially if it's $50 supplement, do $50 worth of research on if you need that or don't.
I think that's an important point, Lisa, because I know for a fact at some point I was just creating really expensive urine. I was taking so many supplements. I had no idea whether they were doing anything for me positively and probably not always, and sometimes negatively. But I was just spending a lot of money because I listened to a podcast and so said they took this. And then I poked around on the internet a little bit and struggling with managing my glucose number. So, oh, this helps with glucose management. So I was just taking whatever I saw helped with what I thought I was struggling with, but I don't really know. And so I probably spent a good portion of my income on so many bottles. It's embarrassing right now. If this were a video podcast, I could just show you. I still have, those little like square baskets that you put into every bookshelf spot in your house. I have probably 6 of those to this day filled with bottles. I don't know why. Maybe I'm a bottle hoarder, but I should just throw them out because I'm not taking them. I think there's part of it to me is like I spent a lot of money on those supplements. So I think it's so smart, as you're saying, invest as much research as you would in the cost of it, because a lot of them aren't probably necessary for you. And if they are, you don't even know what's helping you.
Yeah. I would say, really, if you think you have a vitamin deficiency or a nutrient deficiency, try to get it from your food first. Like, I don't take calcium, I find calcium in my food. Always go there first, and then remember to take the supplementation with the food that has that in that, if you can. The other thing I wanted to say is, Terry, they do have expiration dates on those bottles.
Uh-oh. So all those thousands of dollars are really just wasted now. Thanks, Lisa.
You're welcome. The other thing was I wanted to mention a micronutrient test, an MMT, is probably the most well known. It's going to measure 31 vitamins, minerals, amino acids, antioxidants, and metabolites at the lymphocyte level, which is really reflecting what's actually going on inside the cell over the last 4 to 6 months, rather than just a snapshot of what's floating in the blood that day. And this is a huge distinction because serum levels can look normal while cells are starving.
I think this is a good example, though, of something, and it might be worthwhile to do a little bit of legwork first. And this also depends on where you live. If you can access the test, some of these more specialized tests you can order yourself. Some you have to have a clinician order them, and your general PCP may not be open to doing that or whatnot. I think it's important also to understand why might my doctor not order these tests. And partly because it isn't in alignment with how they know how to practice medicine. And so I don't want to get 50 labs and pay all that money for labs if no one can help me sort through what do I do with this information. So I also think it's smart up front, talk with your clinician. If you have a functional medicine doctor, or I used to do a lot of testing I had an acupuncturist who was trained in Chinese medicine and more functional things. She could order tests and she would go through the results with me. So making sure you're not just ordering a lot of labs that you then don't have some support to figure out what you're going to do based on those labs.
Just looked it up, and SpectraCell actually, you can order them through your practitioner or you can go to their website, SpectraCell's website. They have a provider, a locator to help you find a practitioner near you who will offer the tests. And there's also the direct to consumer options, which are telehealth, direct lab companies will order. You can find a local provider to do it. And it pairs very nicely with the oat test that I talked about earlier. So kind of get a full spectrum on it.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
Like you say, have somebody that can help you go over it, see where you're getting your food from, get a coaching meeting, right? And look, like I can look at what your food log is, what your supplements are, what your fasting protocol is like, and I can help you time those things better and figure out what's the best approach to do.
Very good. So hopefully in our conversation today, Lisa, we've given some framework and some support around really doing some research, doing some testing, getting testing done to find out, but then also doing your own testing. How do I feel with this? Is this helping? Do some labs to help support that. Learn about the timing, how to take it, when is best to take it. Even when I was a therapist and my clients would say, oh, my doctor told me to take this antidepressant at night, but it kind of keeps me awake. Talk to your doctor. Ask if it's okay to take it in the morning. Don't just switch it around on your own. Find out, when does this make most sense? Is there anything that taking this medication or this supplement might interfere with? Just like your example of taking the vitamin D at night was interfering with sleep, taking it in the morning helps.
Just like the bioindividuality that we talked about. For instance, magnesium L-threonate. 20% of the country does better taking magnesium L-threonate at night. 80% does better when they take it in the morning. So it's finding out your individuality too, and what your needs are, what your circadian rhythm is. What phase of life are you in? Are you in your fertile phase? Are you postmenopausal? All of this changes everything. That's all part of the algorithm.
All right. Well, Lisa, thank you so much. And I know this has been extra work for you because you've actually done this twice with me. I wish everyone had gotten to hear the first version, but thank you so much for being here. And I'm sure we'll be back again to dig into some more things with you.
Yes, next time maybe we can talk about what's coming down the pike, which would be probiotics during fasting, which you definitely would have to work with a functional doctor in that case, but it's probably a future.
Very nice. All right, everyone, take good care, and we'll see you again soon.